Show, episode number 47. We had a great episode last time with the interview with Coach Carroll. Today we're going to go and talk about, let's get back to the technical stuff because that's what we love. How does clamping affect a piezo transducer's resonance? And one of the cheapest transducers, and the one I just love to show and demonstrate, is the piezo buzzer. It's really cheap. It's inexpensive. And you can do it has a lot of different properties, which is great for demonstration. So if we have this piezo buzzer here, it can resonate in many ways. Its first resonance, its weakest sort of stiffness wise, is bending resonance, where the piezo expands and the brass then counteracts that. It creates a moment and we get bending. And you can have multiple bending modes as well. The next resonance type which occurs is radial, where we're having this disc and it's radially or resonating in the planar direction. So first it's bending like this, then it's radial, and that's just depending on the speed of sound, which relates to the stiffness and the densities of those specific modes. So today we're going to talk about what happens to a piezo transducer. And the resonance of, I think, of the radial mode or the planar is about 95 kilohertz. And the resonance of the first mode of the bending mode is going to be about 3 kilohertz. So I'm going to demonstrate the differences, and I'm going to show, I have data to show that when you just have the piezo sitting free, what's its resonance or electrical behavior when you clamp it in the middle, and also when you clamp it on the edges. And I set it at a table, and how does the radial, the planar resonance versus the bending mode react? Let's start talking and let's start showing. Let's get up close and personal so you can see everything on the screen. So here's we just have the piezo in open air, and also we have the lower frequency. This is sweeping from 2 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz. You maybe can't read this. You can go in the show notes or in the notes, and I'll have a link to this presentation soon if it's by the time you check this out. But basically, the one easy and quick way you can understand the resonance response is by the minimum impedance, and that here is showing to be 480 kilohertz. I'm sorry, 480 ohms. This is free. This is the completely undamped state, and these wires are actually going to do some amount of damping. So if that becomes really important for your application, you might want to use different wires, especially for such a light transducer. But basically 480 ohms. But then when I hold it in the middle, ooh, look at this difference. This is it's not a nice resonance, but we get some clear, distinct action, especially in the resonance area. We have one distinct dip that we're going to really, an impedance that we're really going to focus on for resonance. But when you clamp it in the middle, it just gets suffocated, because what's happening is the maximum curvature and stress is happening there. You are clamping in at that location, hence you are very much impeding its movement when you clamp it in the middle because of the mode type. So depending on the mode type you're using, you're going to have a different effect on damping. So that's why, as we'll show in the next video, you gotta clamp it somewhere, because you have a device. It's not just gonna float in free space, because that's also very can be problematic if it touches something, if something falls. You need to hold it to something. So if you actually hold it on the edges, you don't get that original 480 ohms, but you do get 1 kilo ohm. So this is something you're going to have to live with, and usually it's not metal clamps on the edges. There's like some O-ring or soft type of epoxy that's used, so you'll probably get better performance than this in reality, but you'll get this, you'll still get a clean resonance response. You'll get resonance at that location. If you use something softer, you will be able to still hold your ceramic. So, in this case, you want to hold your buzzer at the edges. Now we're going to focus on higher frequencies, the radial resonance, and since this is like kind of a composite, or it's radially not, it has, how do I want to describe it? It has in the thickness there is variability, right? You have the piezo mounted to the brass, so when you're actually resonating radially, that does create some type of desire to bend as the piezo stretches. So so it's a little bit more of a complex mode. Also, you don't have perfect symmetry here. And the piezo thickness, as you're not going to be able to see, but I will try. Piezo thickness is there. You can actually see it a little bit. That is also going to play a role there. So basically, but it's still radial, so we take what we can get. But basically, its resonance happens at 95.3 kilohertz and at 38.31 ohms in air. And you'll guessed it, probably when you clamp it at the middle, because of the because it has the no displacement point. See this, the curvature when you were utilizing the bending mode, the curvature is the most in the center. That's why when you clamp it there, it's going to provide a lot of damping. However, when you're radially expanding, the middle portion doesn't have any displacement. This curvature is not exactly relevant for a radial resonance, but it has minimum displacement in the center. So if you clamp it near the center, or if you did exactly the center, that would be the least damping. But if you clamp it near the center, we only see an increase from 38 ohms to 42 ohms. That's quite small. Might as well not even be there. It's probably within like experimental repeatability. However, when you hold it on the edges where it really is vibrating a lot, you end up with 63 ohms. Now, I would actually think that you should actually get a larger impedance change, but data is data, so it is what it is. But you get 63 ohms. So basically, when you're clamping in the middle, when you're free, we had 38 ohms. When you clamped it in the center, it was 42. And when you hold it at the edges, it was 63. So then increasing a lot more. And obviously, the more the tighter hold you have, the more damping is going to occur. And there's definitely a complex mode between the piezo and the breast. I haven't done a simulation or anything on it, but that's just what it's telling me. So this is all for this episode of of the Piezo Shock Show. I hope you learned a little bit about resonant modes, that both this buzzer does have radial modes at high frequencies like 95 kilohertz, and also lower frequency modes, which are usually it's a buzzer, so you want low frequency so you can hear it. And depending on what mode you want to stimulate, you can damp. Those modes will be damped out. Now, you may not actually want it to be damped. It depends. If you do want that, let's say a radial resonance to be damped, or or you have a specific device where you're trying to get rid of a resonance type. But in most cases, you're trying to leave the resonance unimpeded. So you should choose your clamping method, your holding method, so that you reduce the amount of damping. The other thing that also comes into play is where, depending on where you clamp, you damp differently. And if you can do a measurement, like an impedance measurement, you can tell what kind of mode it is, where the activity is happening to the highest extent, and also to the lowest extent. So you can actually experimentally configure different clamping methods. You don't even need to use FEA, and with the point at which you find the lowest effect on the resonance, you would utilize that clamping configuration. Or if you have a resonance such that it's very complex, like there's a lot of resonances, anti-resonances kind of coming together, you can experiment with different clamping methods, which may simplify and make a more distinct resonance present, such that it's easier to drive and get the pure motion that you're looking for. All right, so this was the Piezo Shock Show, episode number 47. You can check out the notes in the comments. In the video description, and you can also check out more information on my consulting services and offerings there. All right, I'll see you next time in episode number 48.